7 million. That's the number of animals used in research, testing and education in the EU every year. But what's even more alarming is that nearly 800,000 of them experience a severe level of pain, suffering or distress. And here's the kicker. Around 12 million animals are bred and killed for scientific purposes, but never actually used in experiments. The main species used for scientific purposes are mice, rats, fish and birds. But many other species are also used, including, for example, non-human primates, dogs, cats, but also rabbits, guinea pigs, frogs and even farm animals, such as pigs, sheep and horses. Non-human primates are mainly used for three purposes: to test the safety of drugs for humans, to study human infectious diseases, and to produce blood-based products, which are used for diagnostic purposes. Most non-human primates used for scientific purposes are born in Asia and Africa. And so they are transported to EU labs by road and by air over very long distances and under varying climatic conditions. Can you imagine being locked in wooden crates for up to 50 hours with restricted watering and feeding? No wonder they often arrive sick or injured. Germany, France, Spain, Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, Sweden and Denmark are the EU member states with the highest number of animals used for scientific purposes. However, it's interesting to note that there's a strong desire among the public in these countries to accelerate the replacement of animals used for scientific purposes and transition to non-animal science. Animal experiments are most frequently performed for basic research. This is often also referred to as fundamental research. And this kind of research is only focused on gaining new knowledge, for example, about human biological processes, but without having clearly defined potential benefits for human health, animal health, or the environment. Many animal experiments are also performed for applied research, which aims to apply existing knowledge, for example, to try to find new drugs for humans or to test for their toxicity or safety. However, the reliance on animal-based methods has many drawbacks. While it's true that certain biological processes are conserved across species, this doesn't mean that humans and animals will react to drugs or chemicals in a similar way. And so as a consequence, findings from animal experiments are often difficult to transfer to humans. And besides this, animal tests are also often expensive and time-consuming, which limits the number of drugs and chemicals that can be tested. As an example, around 10,000 diseases affect humans, but only about 500 have treatments. And when it comes to chemicals, around 70% of the chemicals on the European market have not been assessed for safe use. And so this means that Europe continues to produce many chemicals that are potentially dangerous to humans, animals, and the environment. But luckily, as science has progressed, scientists have now found better ways to mimic the complex functions of human organs and biological processes in the lab while avoiding the use of animals. These new technologies are called microphysiological systems, or MPS. And now here is where it gets really interesting. One type of MPS is called organs on a chip. These are small devices, approximately the size of a USB stick, containing human cells arranged to simulate the structure and function of a real human organ. And they can also pump fluids containing nutrients and oxygen through the device in order to simulate the function of blood flow in our bodies. And with these chips, scientists can study how organs behave in the same way they do in our bodies. And so in this way, scientists can, for example, test drugs or chemicals to see how they might react in human cells and organs. There are now many different organs on a chip, such as heart on a chip, lung on a chip, liver on a chip, or even brain on a chip, just to name a few. And here's something super exciting about organs on a chip. They have the potential to be used for personalized medicine. Because everyone's body is unique, the drugs or treatments that work for one person may not work the same way for another. But because these chips are built from human cells, they can be customized to each person. Imagine this. Doctors could test new drugs on a patient's own cells before giving them to the patient in question. And so this approach could help doctors find the best treatment for each individual, making healthcare more effective overall. And even more exciting, complex MPS can be built to model the interaction of multiple organs. And this is important because many of the body's complex processes involve more than one organ. So to better understand the interaction between human organs, researchers are now able to connect different organs on a chip together, basically creating a mini version of a human body on a chip. And so these humans on the chip could open up a whole new world of possibilities for understanding how our bodies function and finding better ways to treat diseases. MPS are also starting to be used for modeling human diseases. And so, for example, scientists used a brain on a chip to study how the virus that causes COVID-19 infects human brain cells. So using MPS isn't just about replacing animal testing, it's about helping scientists to develop safer and more effective treatments for diseases. MPS have the potential to be more accurate than animals when it comes to figuring out how human bodies might react to drugs and chemicals. And they can also give us insights into human diseases and biological processes that are not possible with animal-based studies. And they could also speed up the drug development process while saving a ton of money. So it's really a win-win-win situation. However, some of these methods can be difficult for researchers to set up in their labs and may have high entry costs. So this highlights the need for more funding and expanded infrastructure to support the implementation and use of these advanced techniques. What's more, the traditional reliance on animal-based research and testing is still deeply embedded in the current policies and practices. Animals have been used in research and testing for so long that the acceptance of new non-animal methods has been slow. So it's not only about having the right tools, it's also about having the right know-how. Scientists, technicians, and other users of animals for scientific purposes, as well as competent authorities responsible for authorizing research projects, may lack the necessary knowledge and skills regarding these new non-animal technologies. And so that's why it's crucial to provide them with up-to-date knowledge and proper training and education to help them acquire the skills they need to use and further develop these technologies effectively. Besides this, there's also a need to foster collaboration and networks between different research sectors and stakeholders in order to increase knowledge sharing and exchange of best practices while building confidence in these new technologies. The need for a transition to non-animal science has been repeatedly expressed by many different stakeholders, including, for example, EU agencies, citizens, academia, industry, and even members of the European Parliament. And in recent years, some EU countries have hopped on board too, committing to reduce the use of animals in science and move towards non-animal science. And let's not forget that the European Commission itself has recognized that animal testing should be phased out in Europe. And so the Commission has recently committed to develop a roadmap for phasing out animal testing for chemical safety assessment. And it has also committed to explore the possibility of developing a European research area action in order to reduce the use of animals in biomedical research and testing of pharmaceuticals. So in a nutshell, it's really an exciting time to be paving the way for a new era of human science. But for this to happen, non-animal technologies must be effectively embedded in policy and practice. So on this World Day for Animals used in laboratories, we call on all stakeholders to join forces and move towards a future where humans, animals, and the environment are better protected. Join our call and share this video.